Hey YouTubers, it's Charlie. Everybody was freaking out after the Flash episode 1 started dropping yesterday about the new Flash costume as well as Barry's costume, so I'll explain what's going on. It's not quite what everyone thinks. I wasn't expecting on doing a new Flash video this soon, but because people went so crazy after Iris and Wally started posting from the set, I figured it'd be good just to get it out of the way, so I'll do a new round of the Flash Ring giveaway too. And what I'm going to do is change the giveaway just a little bit, just because it seems like there's a little confusion, so I'll explain that at the end of the video.
We back.
But the important thing, Kid Flash's costume, and I'll talk about Barry's costume in this too. But the big thing is that Kenyon Lansdale, the actor that plays Wally West, was posting on Instagram along with Candace Patton because apparently they were the first people shooting on the first day. Now, we know Danielle Panabaker was there too, so she might have been filming separately in her Killer Frost makeup, and they didn't want her to appear on camera just because it might have been spoilery. More on that too, because the Flash production office that tweeted that picture of the title also just deleted their Twitter account, so they got in big freaking trouble for posting that. But in a bunch of separate posts, Kenyon Lansdale was posting pictures of his costume, and people took this to mean that he was wearing the red Flash costume. So if you don't read the comics, there have been 2 different times that Wally West has worn a red Flash costume. It was back during the modern age when Barry Allen died. He started wearing the Barry Allen version of the costume. Then during Geoff Johns' run, when he brought Barry Allen back, they changed his costume a little bit, but it was still red. So it was a red costume Wally West. Then again, they just brought back Ginger Wally West during DC Rebirth, and he was wearing his yellow costume. He went off to the Titans comic book and started wearing a red version of the yellow costume with his hair sticking out the top. So because we're doing Flash Rebirth, a lot of people are like, wait a minute, now that Wally's kind of the main version of the Flash while Barry's away, does that mean they're doing the comic book thing where he takes up the mantle and the red costume at the same time? Because technically he is the main version of the Flash. The problem with this though is that Kid Flash's costume legs have always been red. It's always been solid yellow on red. So when you're looking at the costume below the waist, there's nothing that's different. They have changed his costume, but all they've done is made it more form-fitting, like the way they changed Barry's costume during the course of Season 1. He had sort of a Batman problem, so during the Batman Christopher Nolan movies, Batman wanted to be able to turn his head, so they had to make a more modular version of the costume. So depending on what kind of scene they're filming, Grant Gustin has 3 different versions of the Flash costume, so it's the same thing with Wally's costume. So even beyond the cosmetic changes, which is what most people talk about when they talk about new costumes, like what is it gonna look like? They also make functional updates, and I don't think that it was necessary, but Candace Patton came back and replied to this post when people were freaking out saying that Wally's costume has always been red like this. There was an interview that Kid Flash did earlier this year that I think a lot of people missed where he talks about potentially wearing a Barry version of the costume, where he says, "It's not something that's on my radar. I feel as though there's so much story to tell and Wally has so much growing to do. I'd like to see that journey continue. That's what I think is important. We need to see how these characters realistically get to where they're headed for." He's basically saying that he's not going to be wearing the red costume. He's still got a long way to go. There's a lot of character development. It also makes it sound like he's not going anywhere anytime soon. For a little while, I thought that it might be possible that he would go on Titans eventually, but it sounds like if that's going to happen, it's not going to happen until Season 5 of The Flash, or much later down the road. But the Barry Allen costume, people are like, is he going to come back from the Speed Force with a new version of the costume? So in the grand tradition of The Flash, yes, the costume changes a little bit every year, but I feel like people are thinking a little further ahead than the show is. Like they want him to be wearing the 2024 version of his costume. That was the one with the extra gold belt with all the highlights. It did look brighter, there was some more flair on it, but I wasn't the hugest fan of it. I feel like there are better improvements they can make with the color tone and the highlights that aren't quite as gaudy as like all that extra gold on him. I felt like they could have done a much better job with that Future Flash costume. They always take inspiration from things they see in the future, like Cisco saw a vision of the White Emblem, so he's like, you know what, we should do that, that's really cool, and it became this self-fulfilling prophecy.
Our city's very own Scarlet Speedster disappeared in an explosion of light.
I have to say, I'm really digging the brighter red suit, and the white on the symbol, that's dope. Wait a second. Suppose we now change the color on your suit. Will it be because we got the idea from this picture? That would mean we're living in a causal nexus. Wow, this is so trippy.
So if he's wearing the costume when he does come back from the Speed Force, it's mostly going to look like the old version of the costume until Cisco literally builds a new one. The biggest change to his costume, I think, will be the flash ring. So a lot of people have asked, why haven't they done the flash ring yet? Well, one, it's because rings are mostly associated with marriage. They've been building towards a Barry-Iris marriage. So I think you can chart the timeline of Barry using the flash ring with whatever wedding they end up happening on the show whenever they decide to do that. That could be at the end of this season, that could be at the beginning of next season. But it just makes sense that if they're going to get married, there's going to be a wedding ring. That ring would be the flash ring, and that's when he would start using it more. Nobody's been talking about it, but I think the other big reason why they haven't used the flash ring yet is because it requires liberal special effects, and that would cost them a lot more money.
This is gonna be fun.
It's a lot cheaper for them to just turn the camera around and have Barry be in the costume. Like, it's really cool watching Savitar climb out of that costume, but it's really expensive and it blows a lot of time. So they do it a couple times and then they find really quick ways to just jump over that in the future. So they have the technology, they can totally do the flash ring now. I think they're just holding back because of the wedding and because it's kind of expensive to do it in every single episode. And in the comics, Barry doesn't even use the flash ring that much anymore. The ginger Wally West makes fun of him because he can actually use the Speed Force to manifest his costume. He doesn't even need a ring to do it anymore. He literally just wills it into existence. So I think the show at some point will learn to do that too, but it's one of those advanced abilities that they tend to hold off till later seasons. So when you're thinking about new Flash costume, just think just extra bright highlights, slight color change, but other than that, I don't think it's going to change that much. And just to clarify the Flash ring giveaway, I probably don't do this enough. What I do is I pick the winner randomly from the comments. When I say leave a comment, it's not a comment about winning the Flash ring. It's just meant to be a comment about the Flash TV show in general. I'll just remind everyone about that before the Season 4 episode videos start. But what's going to happen is there'll be some new Spider-Man coming up, new Game of Thrones, new Rick and Morty. Leave all your requests in the comments below. You can click here to learn more about Episode 1, and you can click here for brand new Rick and Morty. Thank you so much for watching. Everybody stay awesome. I'll see you guys tonight.